Most remakes feel unnecessary, but the 2006 remake of The Omen is an exercise in futility. Nothing but an endurance test of sitting through worse versions of the exact same scenes and story beats. This is where the franchise hits rock bottom, and it's not even funny. Send help. Welcome, everyone. It is Screams After Midnight. We are deep into October by this point. The Octoberthon is raging on. This is Screams After Midnight. I'm Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Tim has a son named Damien. Well, technically a cat, but same difference. So he's well versed to talk about today's movie because he's got a shitty remake of Damien. So I kid. Your cat's wonderful, Tim. Take no ill will.
Yeah, she can be a little shit sometimes.
Oh yeah, they all can. Yeah.
We love her though. Yeah.
Oh dear, yes. Today we talk about The Omen from 2006. It is the remake. We've done the first four. This is the fifth entry in the franchise, starring Liev Schreiber and Julia Stiles and David Thewlis. I should mention him too. And that is what we're going to do today.
A horror royalty though, for at least for the two main stars. I mean, you got Julia Stiles from Orphan First Kill.
I had no idea where you were going with that. What horror movie is she from?
And of course, we can't forget Liev Schreiber from
Phantoms.
Yes.
You were expecting me to see Scream, and I didn't do it. I don't know where your mind works, Tim. I knew where you were going with that. But yes. Welcome to the show, everyone. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. Although if you've seen the original, there's nothing to spoil. But just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's basically gonna say when we do the plot breakdown, we can just copy and paste the review from the first movie and just say it's like this but crappier.
Well, I'll just edit in the review of the original and we'll come back for the outro at the end. We can have a nice easy day. But yeah, we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you warning before spoilers, and of course if you're liking the show on YouTube, well, show it by hitting the like button. Helps us out a bunch. And of course you can get bonus episodes at Patreon or via YouTube membership, but I'll tell you more about that stuff at the end of the show. So, someone at Fox looked down at their calendar around 2003, 2004, and noticed that in a couple of years' time, in 2006, there's going to be a 6th of June in 2006. The date is going to literally be 666. Well, there's a 0 in there too, but let's ignore that, right? Okay?
Yeah.
We can't go back to the year 6, as much as some people might want to. We can. So it's like, this is a marketing dream. That's that we can make an Omen movie. We'll just remake the original because everyone was doing remakes at this time in the mid 2000s, and thus we have the time. Yeah, thus we have the 2006 version of The Omen, and it is just a list of scenes from the original being redone with less personality, less charisma, less artistic flair, or it's basically just The Omen again but without a soul is how I'd describe it. If movies have such a thing, this is lacking the soul. And I mean, I guess it's not surprising, but it's like, there are certain scenes that they redo and it's like, how is this scene worse? Like, we have so much more technology and yet like this looks so much worse than it did 30 something years ago. I mean, at the time it would have been exactly 30 years ago. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well. And now we're getting close to 50 years ago. We're 2 years away from 50.
Ha-cha-cha.
Yeah, this movie's 18 years old, Tim. Let that sink in for just...
Jeez Louise.
A minute. Yeah. It has that annoying visual look of a crappy horror movie from the mid 2000s. And what do I mean by that? I mean cold, sterile, very desaturated, just bland as shit look to it. I don't know who to blame for this. I know some people like this remake that I'm about to mention, but I kind of blame The Ring for this because that's like the earliest one I can think of with that look, and then so many crappy horror movies for the rest of that decade had this look to them. Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of works with The Ring. Just
because of like the setting and stuff, and it being very like kind of mopey and like kind of rainy and stuff like a lot of the time. Like I don't hate it in that movie, but I agree. It's like so many other movies seem like they have like something similar going on. And it just always makes it very boring and dull.
Yeah. It looks just bland. I mean, the whole movie's bland. Does I mean, like, give us a bit of I don't know. What was the word I'm looking for? Give us some energy getting into this episode, everyone. Give us some vibes, because this is going to be a struggle trying to be enthusiastic and talk about a movie that is devoid of any emotion or feeling whatsoever and incurs none of those feelings in the people watching it. So I don't know how we're going to make this not a boring, bland conversation, but we'll try our damnedest.
I appreciate your spirit. Yeah, it's very frustrating because like it's not just that you're remaking a movie, you're remaking a very, very, very good movie, and there's no way you're going to be able to outdo the original. So I feel like the only move would be to try to do something really crazy and dumb and over the top, so at least people can be like, oh wow, this is like trying something or whatever. But I mean, if you're just trying to like replay the original with just, you know, new like actors and stuff, it's not going to do anyone's favors. You know, it's just going to be compared unfavorably to the first one, and there's not going to be anything like new or interesting enough about it. I guess, you know, they're kind of just banking on like people maybe not having seen the first one but having the name recognition and wanting to see what it's about or whatever. But I don't know, I can't imagine like that many people actually dug this movie.
That's always the weird thing with these remakes, is that for people who actually know the name, they're not going to like the fact that it's being remade. Once in a while you'll get like a good reboot that works. See Evil Dead 2013, for example.
Sure.
Where notably that just does its own thing. It takes the basic idea but just makes its own, you know, it's practically just a sequel with new characters rather than being a remake of the original film. Here, this does the opposite of that, where it is just going through the same scenes, sometimes even with the same dialogue. Every so often there'll be a little difference, or a big difference even, but almost always for the worst, and it doesn't really feel like there's any creativity going on into it. But like I was saying,
what was the one thing the original was missing? Crappy dream sequences.
Oh yeah, oh god, yeah, I could start on that. But like I was saying though, like, the people who know the name recognition, like the studios think that's so important. Like, oh, people know the name The Omen. Yes, but anyone who knows the name The Omen is not going to like that it's being remade, and is probably going to be a much, much tougher like audience to crack. Yeah. Right? But and anyone who doesn't know the Omen doesn't get the name recognition, really. Yeah. Right? Like, I mean, maybe they've heard of it in passing and it'll get them to the movies. But I feel like, I mean, for one, this movie definitely does feel like just like a really cheap marketing gimmick, where it was just, oh, we've got this date, we'll put this remake out, it doesn't matter if it's dog shit, it'll make a little bit of money just because of the name, and then we'll just move on, and it doesn't matter that it didn't do that great. But yeah. I feel like across the board though, like, how many of the horror remakes of the 2000s got sequels? I.e., how many of them were successful enough to bother making another one? The fact that most of them don't kind of suggests that by and large it was a complete failure of an era of, like, at least in terms of the remakes. I'm not saying there wasn't other good horror movies happening, but I mean, Texas Chainsaw got a prequel, so I guess that one counts. But
Hills Have Eyes, I guess.
That got one sequel. Was that direct to video or was that like a theater release? I can't remember.
I don't remember. If it was in theaters, it's probably like a really short run or something.
I mean, I guess technically Halloween counts. Rob Zombie, so we'll say that. But I mean, Elm Street remake never get a sequel. The Friday the 13th one never get a sequel.
No.
What else did we have in this era? The Fog never get a remake. I mean, the original never get a remake
I forgot
either.
about that one.
Or a sequel rather. Let me see. Hold on. Horror remakes. I'm curious now to look at this.
Yeah.
Right. Crazy's never got a sequel. What else we got here? God. Wicker Man never got a sequel.
Okay. Imagine Wicker Man 2.
I know. Nick Cage is somehow back. We don't know why, but he is. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm having trouble with thinking of other ones. Oh, the Carrie remake. I mean, that was a little bit later, admittedly, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I just like so few of them actually were successful enough to warrant more, which is obviously what studios want. They want franchises. They want things to keep going, but it never quite happened. And even the examples that you can think of that do have sequels, I would say they're probably not remakes of old movies. They're remakes of Asian movies, because Grudge and Ring both got sequels, for better or worse.
Yeah. I kind of like, I mean, I guess, yes, they're remakes, but I kind of put those in a different camp than like remaking an old, American movie. Cause
Sure.
Cause I feel like the idea behind those are like, oh, like we're bringing this to an audience that hasn't seen a lot of this because, the movie's from another country or whatever, versus like, oh, we're remaking this old movie because people actually, have seen it and know the name or whatever,
Psycho remake, no sequel.
Right.
Poltergeist remake, no sequel.
Oh man, so many of these I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot that even existed.
Yeah. Amityville Horror remake, no sequel.
That's right.
I mean, I know there's a lot of movies that come out with the word Amityville in it, but nothing to do with that.
Yeah, it doesn't
movie.
count. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not counting that. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to look at that and see just how unsuccessful, by and large, they actually were as a whole. Which I guess it's a good thing they eventually maybe learned the lesson a little bit and stopped doing it.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's so strange to me because it seems like, I'm not anti-remake, but again, it just makes so much more sense to me. Like, yeah, you remake the bad movie that like people don't care about. So it's like, okay, this had a good premise, but the movie kind of sucked, but let's give it another chance, give it to a talented filmmaker and do something with it versus, like why are we retreading ground for like movies that were good? I mean, I guess I know why, because people are more concerned with IP and name recognition and stuff that, they figure it doesn't really matter as much because people see it because of that. But still, it's so dumb, and then, this is just really so boring and bland. And it's like, I would say probably something like the Nightmare remake would, be like a worse movie, but at least that one is like so bad and it's taking big swings that there's a lot more interesting stuff to talk about. Again, this is just like, all right, yeah, they redid this scene, but it's worse. And, this character is back, but he's worse. It's just, that's like all there is to it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll compare the various death scenes to the original. Once we get into spoilers, we'll compare how they handle certain big moments and whatnot. But yeah, this may end up being the shortest Omen review we do, just because I like there's not a lot to talk about outside of it is just doing the plot of the original film again. It is going through the same beats and is just failing miserably at every turn. I think because this is the second time I've watched this, I think the first time I saw this, I might have seen a slightly longer version of it. And the reason why I say that is because I remember there being a moment of acting from Liev Schreiber that made me laugh out loud the first time I watched it, and I don't think it was here this time. So I think, because it was when he goes to visit his wife in the hospital and somewhere in the middle of the movie, and the exchange that made me laugh, I don't really quite remember what it was, but it wasn't here this time. So I think I watched an extended cut last time. But not this time, which I mean, I'm not mad because less minutes is all I can ask for, really. But hey, at least that would have been something to make fun of.
Yeah.
I mean, the performances are just like, I don't know, it feels like they're just showing up for their paycheck. They're not absolutely horrific, but they're just sleeping through the roles is the best I can describe it.
I mean, most of the people, like, I don't think are necessarily like bad actors, but again, like you're comparing them to like the people from the original, it's just like it doesn't feel like the same kind of gravitas. I
mean, yeah, Gregory Peck versus Liev Schreiber, there's no competition here. Like Liev Schreiber.
People don't refer to Liev Schreiber as this generation's Gregory Peck.
They most certainly do not. He kind of just stands there looking constipated a lot of the time. Is the best I could describe it. Julia Stiles is not great. I don't know. I've never really thought Julia Stiles was that great an actor, to be honest. She has kind of like a. I'll put it this way: like in this movie, very very quickly, and again, compare it to the original. And sometimes I get frustrated when we talk about something where we can compare it to a previous movie or an original, because it's, I think there's more merit to the conversation if you're critiquing something on its own terms. But
sure.
when your movie's literally just going through the same plot and doing the same scenes, you can't avoid it. All you can do is compare it to the original, because it's got nothing on its own to actually talk about. But the performance,
especially because like we've been doing a lot of these. I mean, we've been spacing them out, but we've been watching these movies relatively close to each other. So it's like, all right, the first one's still pretty fresh in my mind. Like we recorded it earlier, but it's still like just like a couple weeks, a month ago or something.
Yeah. I mean, for us, in terms of recording, maybe 2 months ago at most.
Oh, okay. But, yeah. So
yeah, but it's still fresh. It's still we see it in my mind, and I've seen it more times than this, obviously, because I feel like the original wife in the first film is there's kind of like a warmth to her, and it feels like she actually I don't know, there's sort of like, I think there's nuance to both her and Gregory Peck's performances in that first movie, where they feel like sort of full fleshed out people. It feels like the moments of happiness feel genuine, the concern feels genuine. In this movie, like in the original film, when we get to the point where the wife is starting to sort of think that, there's something wrong with Damien and she doesn't want to be around him, it kind of hits really hard, because you really got like how happy she was to have a kid early on in the movie. Here, like, they replay some of the same beats, but everything just feels so cold and sterile. That warmth to start with, so that it feels like something's been taken away, as like the rug's pulled out from under them, isn't there. So here you're just kind of left with this character who kind of just jumps to hating her child very very quickly in this one. And it's not even like it's a shorter movie, so they're speeding through it. The runtime is actually pretty similar to the original film, may even be slightly longer. But somehow it feels like some of the things that are happening feel more rushed, which congratulations for pulling that off, I guess. So I don't know. There's the nanny character. We won't say too much here, but I'll say that this was a much inferior version of the nanny character, and it was actually one of the things in the direction that I really noticed. Is there's a really prominent moment in the original film where she's with Damien, and Damien's on a scooter, and it's building up to a big moment, and the camera keeps like going into her eyes and stuff. The equivalent of that in this, where she's just sort of sitting looking at Damien, and then she smiles, and the camera pans over to like the modern scooter that's like sitting there, and then she smiles like, aha, yes, Damien, you've got an idea, haven't you, my boy? Like, when that moment happened, I'm like, oh my god, this is just so devoid of like I feel like I want to show like those two versions of the same scene back to back in like a class of students, and like teach them like how one is like trying its best to create an effect and make you draw you into a scene and give you a sense of something, and the other one feels like the director's just like, it's another day at the job, I'll just put my feet up, just get a simple two shot, pan over, it'll be fine.
They should let us teach a class.
Oh, they should. Screams 101.
That'd be pretty good. Maybe that could be like a bonus episode we do.
We're going to come up with a lesson plan, do a lecture for one episode. Okay. Maybe it's just a whole Patreon tier. We'll give you a. I'll come up with a whole lesson plan. I'll do a class every month.
And then we'll hand out grades.
Yes, there'll be
mostly
tests.
The grades are mostly just dependent on how much you sign up for on the Patreon. Like
you pay for a name. Absolutely, yeah. Get a little badge next to your name. We kid. Yeah, spoilers, I guess. I mean, what else to talk about without spoilers? Because
I mean, it sucks. It's hollow, uninspired, boring, and yeah, it's just
it's tedious. Sitting through this was tedious. Like I usually don't eat while I'm watching movies. Like when I'm sitting down. Yeah, like I'll watch like a TV show or stuff on YouTube while I'm eating, but typically for a movie, especially if I'm going to the main room and I've got a big TV there. I just got my new TV, by the way, so I mean I watched Omen 2006 and like OLED quality with stunning black levels. Didn't save it, obviously. Still was a piece of shit, but normally in that situation I don't eat while I'm watching stuff. But
okay. I love a good snack while watching a movie.
Well, no, I'll have a snack, but I won't eat like dinner, is what I'm saying.
Oh, sure. Okay, gotcha.
But I got so bored and so hungry halfway through this, I'm like, no, I'm having some spaghetti. I'm going to eat spaghetti while I watch this stupid movie. Because at least I can distract myself and look down at my food instead of the screen for 10 minutes while I'm eating. Yeah. So it's all I've got to go on. Anyway.
Hey, better the meatball on your plate than the meatball on the screen.
Oh, what a wordsmith you are, Tim. Yeah. So I will say
I was calling Liev Schreiber a meatball for anyone who didn't get it.
Very good. I will say spoiler warning here, of course, but the spoiler warning is more for the original film because you should go watch that if you haven't. If you've seen the original film, there's nothing to spoil here, and if you haven't seen the remake, then you should not care about us spoiling it because it's terrible, it's boring, you do not need to care. So if you've seen the original film, you can disregard any spoiler warning. If you've not seen the original film, then make sure you go watch that before we spoil it by talking about this in proxy. So yes, okay. Tim, did you like how this one started in an observatory in the Vatican?
Oh, right. I almost forgot about that.
And there was like shooting stars, which were, dare I say, an omen of things to come.
I mean, please, dare away. Yes. Yeah, it makes it feel so epic. And then one thing that I guess was new to this movie that I really could have done without was like all the scenes of real world tragedies, including like 9/11 and like all the. I was like, oh, cool, thanks. Like a crappy movie.
Yeah, can we also point out that these scenes that we're seeing, it's a presentation being given to the Pope. The Pope is watching this, and basically this is like, hey, so that the Bible, the prophecy describes this tragedy, and then it's like, oh, we've interpreted that to mean 9/11. So you see 9/11 on their projector, and I'm like. Why are you trying to tie the lore of the Omen into this? Like it's not a thing where like you can kind of do it to an extent now. Like I don't feel that weird now when someone uses 9/11 in a movie or a TV show as part of their history or whatever. Like this character's origin is that they were in New York in 9/11 and that like like that's fine, whatever. Like no problem. But this is only 5 years after it, and it's like tying it into some let's face it, just a sort of dumb supernatural horror story about the son of the devil. I don't know, it just feels a bit...
No, it just seems unnecessary. Like, you could have just had the person being saying, like, oh, yeah, we're seeing, like, all these occurrences and disasters around the world. And, like, you don't have to get so specific and then, like, remind me of all these real-world tragedies and war and, like, all this stuff. Is just like, this is too much.
I think it also makes it kind of dated in the sense where the original obviously brings up, oh, he'll be born of politics, and because this is happening in the world, that this is the right circumstances for him to arise. But it's not like so specific that it's referencing actual things that have just happened in the real world. So it doesn't feel like, it's firmly based in 76. It's kind of timeless, outside of, clothes and hairstyles and things like that. But this though, like, okay, you can't, like, technically Damien now should be what, in his mid-20s? He should be full on Sam Neill era doing bad shit.
I guess so.
I mean if he's 5 in 2006, he would be okay, well, maybe not. I mean, just hitting mid-20s, I guess, by now. But,
close, yeah.
He'd be 23. He'd be 23 this year.
Nice. Good for him.
It's been good for him. Oh dear. So this is all of our extra stuff at the start before we do the same as the original film. Liev Schreiber's in the car, being taken to the hospital. Although here they have to dumb it down for the audience by having him say out loud, "Oh, my wife's in labor, but I understand there's some complications." I'm like, "Oh, thanks for that." We could have just gotten that from the tone and like the mood of the scene when he gets to the hospital, like we did in the original film.
Yeah.
No.
Like that's funny. That reminds me of like a couple of weeks ago, I watched Paper Moon for the first time. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I don't even think I've heard of it.
It's it's not a horror movie, but it's a very good movie though. It's what's that guy's name? Pete Bogdanovich, I want to say.
Yeah. I don't know him, but yeah, that's how you say Bogdanovich. Yeah.
Okay. But it was just like a really good movie. It's about like this con man who's kind of traveling around with his supposed daughter. He doesn't admit it's his daughter, but it's just a really great movie. There's just a lot of things where it'll just draw the audience's attention to something, and then like you'll know like, oh, the character is going to use that, or oh, that's going to give the character an idea. And it was just like felt very refreshing, and was just making me think about how so many movies like, you know, made today or like from around this time like would never do that. They would always just have to have a character out loud say like, oh, this makes me think of this, or like, oh, I just got an idea because of that, like we can do this, you know what I mean? Like it's frustrating when there's just like a lack of you know, like understanding that the audience can, you know, put things together themselves.
Lack of trust, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Lack of trust, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, part of what makes something engaging is that it presents you enough of the information that you put some of the pieces together yourself. And the writers and the movie makers can predict like when and how you're going to put things together because they know what you've been given in terms of the information. Like that's kind of like a talent that maybe doesn't get talked about enough. Is like a good storyteller knows exactly what the audience is thinking at any given point in their story, so that they know how to like, you know, shake things up at the right moment or reveal something at the right moment because they're primed for that next bit, or they're primed for the shock, or they're primed for the relief of the joke, or whatever it is.
Sure, yeah.
Dear, I'm primed for a noose myself after this one, if I'm honest.
Yeah. It's okay. We got, you know, don't worry. We still got some good heavy hitters that we'll be watching soon.
I hope so, Tim. I hope so. This is put me a bit of a downer. I'm not going to lie.
Hey, I watched this right after watching Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies Go to College, and man, talk about like going from like high to low.
Ghoulies 3 was high art, was it?
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, I was like, I don't know if we need to do the whole franchise, but I feel like we should do the third movie as a bonus episode. I think it would be worth it.
I mean, I've never seen the first two, so I mean, I'm not against.
You can go in. Trust me, you can go in cold for number 3.
The principles, though, Tim. The principles.
Screw the principles.
No. No, and that's how dodgy sex crimes happen, Tim. Screwing principals.
Well,
principals shouldn't be screwing their students.
I'm not saying our principals.
Yeah, I suppose you could screw a principal, just not while you're the one in school. Yes.
Right. Yeah. No. Of course. I'm
talking nonsense. This is a bunch of stupid shit, and it's just because I'm trying to entertain myself because I don't want to talk about this boring ass movie.
Right.
Oh, you bought a house for us, did you, honey? It's very big.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's cutting edge dialogue. I was so into it.
Yeah. And then, yeah, like you said, it doesn't really seem like they particularly like care that much for each other. Like, kind of right away, they seem like they're like a little bit at odds.
There's zero chemistry between these two leads.
I'm gonna get a nanny. Well, why do you need a nanny? I thought you would watch the kid. Like, excuse me, like I don't want to watch the kid. Like,
honestly, that like I'm concerned this might come out sounding a little sexist, but that scene did confuse me because they're looking for a nanny, and obviously they already had one, the one that hanged herself, because that's like something from the original as well. Right. And he just kind of, because she's like, oh, I'm having trouble finding a nanny, I don't like any of the applicants, and he's like, well, maybe we don't need a nanny, maybe you could just sort of like take those roles. and I was thinking like, well, yeah, technically I don't think you have a job, surely you don't really need a nanny if you're staying at home, right? Isn't that the point of a nanny, is that but like because he says you're not working, and she's like, I'm raising our son, that's working, but the nanny's going to replace most of that work.
Right.
So I don't know. It was like a weird conversation to me. I didn't quite get the logic of it, other than just that she's already stressed and wants someone to take Damien off her hands as much as possible.
For sure. I mean, I do think sometimes like as a parent, because I probably would have thought like the same thing before having the kids, and then realize like, oh geez, like it is so much work that like I feel like some people are like, oh yeah, like the parent that is raising the kids while the other one goes to work, like they kind of have it easy, but it's actually kind of the opposite. Like work is a nice little escape, and but also he's probably old enough to start going to school, which like when that happens, then you'll have most of the day free anyway. So I'm not disputing that taking care of the kid is a lot of work, but it felt like she's trying to eliminate that part of what she's doing during the day by having a nanny. So what are you doing then? Like, what, you getting a hobby? you taking up some croquet or something? What's going on? Maybe synchronized swimming? Yeah. But hey, let's might as well just hire whatever creepy nanny lady applies.
Yeah, it was all a bit strange. So one of the first things that happens actually is that a slight change from the original is that Liev Schreiber's character, who's still Robert Thorne actually, they're using the same names. He's not actually appointed ambassador to the UK immediately. His boss is, and he's going to be his assistant. And this is actually how we get an extra death at the start, because the boss gets Final Destination, so that Liev Schreiber gets the job instead. And I think, I mean, maybe part of this is just so they could have an extra death at the start of the movie, but part of me also thinks they realised that Liev Schreiber is half the age that Gregory Peck was in the original, and the ambassador tends to not be that young.
That makes sense, yeah.
So this is how we're going to justify it. Like, they cared about justify. I would never have questioned it. If they just told me he was ambassador, I wouldn't even thought of it.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know any ambassador. I don't know what age they are.
Yeah, I would imagine that they're, hip young guys. You know, like some old fuddy-duddy like representing your country. I mean,
now I feel like it's been pointed out. Yeah, it makes sense that they're probably at least in their 50s typically, just because, high position, a lot of trust there and blah, 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 usual shit. But it wouldn't have really... Like, this movie's problems are not alleviated by them explaining why a man in his 30s is appointed ambassador to another country.
Yeah. So what did you think of the death, though? Did you think it was cool, or...
It was okay. Like, it's basically this guy, maybe a homeless man or something, is like sort of going up a hill, and he kind of knocks a block that's behind the wheel, not the wheels. Yeah, the wheel. Yeah, that's the word, right? There's like basically this big truck's got like a wheel behind it, or why can't I speak? So there's this big truck that's full of flammable liquid, and they've got like a brick or something wedged behind the wheel to keep it sort of there, right? Maybe the brake's not working for some reason. I don't know why. But this guy accidentally knocks it out the way, and it rolls down the hill towards the ambassador, who's stuck in traffic in his limo, and it starts filling the limo with fuel, which then gets ignited, and it goes boom. It's okay. Like, I mean, I appreciated that there was it was a very Omen style setup / Final Destination setup to the thing.
Well, it's funny because at first I thought that they were gonna go with like, they're doing the decapitation thing like this early on in the movie. Like, I assumed the truck was gonna roll in and like cut his head off or something. But no, it ended up being a little different. But I mean, it's fine, I guess. Like, it didn't do much for me, but whatever.
I mean, I think as far as horror movie deaths go, an explosion just isn't actually that exciting because it's just like it just looks like an explosion. You don't get to see. I think if you had like a comical, I mean, I'm not saying that this would fit in an Omen movie, but if you had like a sort of like a head kind of like roll out of the explosion or something, that would make it more fun or or whatever. I don't know, but that's fine.
Yeah, and then and it's funny. Like I also like I wasn't sure it was gonna explode at first. Like at first I thought it was just gonna fill up his car and he was gonna drown, which I thought was like, okay, this is kind of weird.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. It's also like so weird too, like because you would think, you know, these dark, sinister forces that, you know, they would want to be very hush hush because, you know, they're trying to do all these big evil things and you don't want people like questioning stuff or whatever, but they always go for like the most like outrageous, like extravagant deaths possible. Like, I mean, yes, it's like a bizarre accident, but you think if someone's like looking around and be like, huh, that's kind of weird. Like there's been like, you know, 5 or 10 like really weird, crazy deaths all surrounding this one guy. Like, isn't there a little something there?
I think that's just the hubris of death, right? Like it wants to flaunt what it's got. I can do this, and you can't stop me. Yeah, because what are they going to do if to figure it out? Like, what are they going to do?
There's nothing you can do. It's death.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's just that. You just, let's just look at the deaths first. That's just something to focus on. Nice bit of structure. Sure. Let's pretend we have structure on this show. So obviously,
is the priest next or?
No, it's the nanny who hangs herself.
Oh, right. Yes, yeah.
Which I do want to mention because there's two key differences here in this scene because they're, you know, it's the exact same setup. They've got like a birthday party going on, lots of people outside the house. You know, the photographer's there. That's who David Lewis plays in this movie. I want to mention the two differences though, being one, the way the dog stares at her, or more precisely the fact that it's a different type of dog, because the dog here actually looks like a sweet dog that I would like to cuddle, unlike the angry looking dog of the original movie. But she just, like, you know, she stares at it and it's like miles away and it's this whole big moment. But it doesn't have that kind of sharp like music that the original has. It doesn't have the extreme close up on the eyes. It's a bit more, you know, I hate to come back to that word, but it's a bit more bland in its execution. The actual jumping off though, I mean, she says, "Look at me, Damien, it's all for you," blah 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 blah. But they made a choice here, which I don't necessarily dislike, just for difference sake, is that instead of like going through a window when she lands, she actually like jumps like in between the windows, so she just sort of bounces off the wall. Sure. I mean, I appreciate it just for the sake of it being different, and you know, it still looks quite, you know, nasty. It's, you know, it's not like it's admittedly though, I would much rather that be in like a sequel rather than a remake where I'm just seeing the exact same death. Like I think just another hanging in a sequel of some kind would have been more interesting. But that I would say this one, the direction's not as good, but the actual like content of the death, I would say it, you know, more or less breaks even with the original. I wouldn't say that it's significantly worse, I guess is how I'd phrase it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just hard because, like, even if it was like fine or okay, there's always going to be the stigma of, well, it's just, you know, trying to do the original. Like, you know,
oh yeah, of course. Like that's why I'm saying I think the direction's worse. So the original movie scene is still much better. I'm just saying the actual like visual of the death itself, the
sure,
you know, the hanging, the way she bounces off the wall, I would say it's not like significantly, because there's definitely one or two deaths later on where I'm going to say that it is such a massive downgrade in every sense. This one I'd say is closer, at least in the sense that it's not like just painfully worse.
Now, I forget if they did this in the original, but it did kind of make me laugh. Like, you know, after, you know, she dies or whatever, and like the people at the party like start causing a stampede. Like people are like, they're so shocked, like, oh, but like
That didn't happen in the original.
Like,
they all just sort of stand shocked and in silence in the original.
I feel like that would be the normal reaction. Like, well, yes, you would probably
what
be
are you running
like,
from? What do you think? Her body's going to come after you?
Yeah. Oh no, like she's gonna hang us next. Like, run, like throw the table up. Like, the one thing I can see is like maybe it'd be like, oh, I don't want my kid to see this. Let me rush over and like cover their eyes. Like that, I would understand. But still, like, you don't need to flip over tables and like jump over people to do that.
Yeah, very strange, very strange. I get you want to get your kids away from it and like, hey, let's not have our children look at the hanging dead body. Like, I understand that part. But yeah, they're running away like, like there's a fire or something like that.
Right.
Really strange. Really strange.
Yeah.
Next
I guess I'll give him credit because that made me chuckle. But,
sure, yeah. Next one is the priest, who, of course, in the original... Yeah.
So horrible.
In the original, it's obviously this is the spire of the church that comes down during the thunderstorm and impales him. Really cool death in the original. And here they decided to try and up it by just adding some more stuff to it. Now, I will give it a slight bit of like, okay, I at least respect the part of the idea. Like the idea that you're also going to like have him stabbed with thousands of pieces of glass as well. I don't necessarily hate the visual idea of the ending being having all that sticking out of him. However, the CG of the pole coming down, going through the stained glass window, the way it's shot, and then the way it goes through him is just such inferior to the original.
So bad.
And yeah, and all the glass, well, I don't necessarily hate the idea of... I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily like it here because it feels like you're trying to just one-up the original by adding more stuff. I think this, the idea of like a window breaking and all the glass like stabbing someone, I think that's a fun idea for another death. Like do that as a separate death. That sounds cool.
Sure. Yeah.
But this is just a bit too much.
It's funny, like the differences in glass in like some movies, because I feel like some movies like a window will shatter and like people just kind of be like and they'll be fine, and then like other movies like a window will shatter and it's just like the pieces will pierce their brain. Well,
I mean there's different types of glass, so that's part of it. Also, there are, movies, like especially older movies, have really fake glass where it breaks into these big chunks. Whereas I feel most like normal real glass, from what I've seen, and not that I've went around breaking it myself, but whenever you do see any glass that's been smashed or hit, it tends to like sort of, like it tends to be a lot of little pieces. It tends to like sort of like have that kind of like frosted effect, as if like you kind of it becomes almost like a powdery kind of thing.
Sure.
So yeah, but this is stained glass. I don't know if stained glass would break like this, or if it would break more like a windshield of a car. I have no idea. I'm sure there's some glass experts out there who are like, hey, if it's double paned, then it'll break like this. If it's single paned, it'll break like this. If it's stained glass, it'll break like this. If it's fancy, I don't know what other types of glass there are, but I'm sure there's other types.
Well, as long as it's not Mr. Glass, because I don't want anything to do with him.
I mean, I love Unbreakable, so I don't mind you making a reference to it, but very random.
He's a bad guy. I don't want him watching our videos.
All right. So, that one's
I know
just
you
kind
said
of like
you liked Unbreakable and not Glass.
Well, yeah, Unbreakable's much, much better than Glass. Yeah. Is that what that last one was called? Yeah, it was called Glass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unbreakable is amazing. Split's pretty good. Glass has some nice things in it, but ultimately is, disappointing. We'll see. Death after this one would be... What was after that? I guess this would be like the scooter incident after this.
Jeez, I'm having trouble even remembering what the scooter incident was.
Remember, he rides up in the scooter when Julia Stiles is like, because Julia Stiles is pregnant at this point, and it's the whole he wants to kill the baby.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, you mean the one that Damien was riding.
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking of like someone riding like a like a moped or
Oh
something.
no! Like a children's.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, I'd call that a scooter. I don't know, maybe Americans call it something different. The thing he's riding.
I guess, yeah.
But either way, he knocks her off, and I actually was surprised they tried to film this like the original, where they showed like her going all the way down to the floor. They kind of did a similar shot, which I don't know. Like it's this like catch-22 of like, on the one hand, well, I appreciate you trying to be authentic, but on the other, like you're just doing the original movie's shot again. So it just feels like shrug. I don't care. Like.
Right.
Congratulations, you did it again. Yeah. Round of applause, everyone. Be happy for them.
Did we learn nothing from Gus Van Sant's Psycho?
Yeah, I mean that's the poster. I mean, we've not done that remake yet. We did all the Psycho movies like 5 years ago, and we still haven't done the remake. And we should do it at some point, just for the
we gotta
the study of like actually doing a shot for shot remake and the pointlessness of it.
I do think it's interesting in theory, like that they did it, but yeah, ultimately it's pointless.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. The movie itself, the finished product, is not interesting at all, but it's interesting to study and analyze why it is a complete like waste of time. You know, and like here's an example of like it's Eddie Eden shot exactly like the original, and yet it feels much worse. Why is that? Discuss. You know, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, and I think he even like said in an interview or something like it was something he always wanted to do as an experiment to see like, if we take a movie and use like the same dialogue but like different actors, like how does that change like the feel of the movie and stuff, which again I'm like, okay, like I guess there's something in there, but it doesn't make a good movie, but I guess a thought experiment or whatever.
Yeah, I think it just proves that making a movie isn't a science, right? It's not just it's not just 2 + 2 = 4. There is like that extra element, and if you want to call that a soul or artistic integrity or whatever, but even just making the exact same shots, the exact same dialogue, editing it the exact same way, there's just a spark in the creation process of finding what works and just like going out of your way to like copy it. Never just it doesn't feel like it has anything behind it. It's
for sure. And I feel like there's so many movies where like there'll be a memorable scene and then you'll hear the director or actor or whatever talk about it and how like, oh, like this was actually a happy accident. Like we didn't know this was going to happen and we just kind of thought of it on the fly, or like something happened, we had to like make do or whatever. So, like you said, it's not like a perfect science. Like sometimes things just happen and they end up for the best.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't think this is necessarily next, but I do want to mention this one because it's probably as far as like changing a death scene, it's the one that's the most like the wife's death in the original is such a great scene where the nanny comes to the hospital. There's that great standoff moment where they're staring at each other, and then the wife plummets out of the building into an ambulance, and then the ambulance door opens and you see her lying there dead. It is such a good death, right?
Yeah.
Omen remake. The nanny injects her IV with something and holds her mouth until she dies.
Yeah.
Talk about just completely uninteresting and just nothing. It's just oh my god, I couldn't believe how badly they changed this. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. We keep saying they should change more because otherwise what's the point? But this is one where they changed it to like something far less interesting, and I don't understand the process at all. Like, did you think this was going to hit harder because it was more like realistic? I mean, people can get thrown out a window. There's nothing unrealistic about that.
Yeah. Again, I think the only like hope I would have for this movie is if they're gonna try to like go for big swings and be really over the top. But yeah, they never do that. It always seems like it's stuff that's a bit more subdued or just trying to be the exact same thing as the original.
Yeah, and I guess the other big death obviously is the final decapitation one, which in the originals there's the sheet of glass coming off the back of a truck. Here it's a decapitation again, but they do it differently, where it's actually like it's like the sign for a hotel that breaks and swings down and decapitates him, the photographer.
It was like there's some like workers at the top, and like one of them like like their foot hits their hammer or whatever, which this stuff kind of makes me sad because it's like, okay, it's not just that this person is randomly dying. It's like, oh, like that construction worker is gonna like feel so much guilt. And I mean, who knows? He might even, I don't know if he will be like charged with like criminal negligence or something like that, like could potentially face consequences. But even if not, he'll just have like probably so much guilt and stuff that it made me sad.
I love how you come out of this scene going, someone think of the poor worker who is now going to be scarred for life.
But I mean, in terms of like, yeah, it's not as like cool or as bombastic as the original. I guess maybe similar to what you're saying with the nanny, like the decapitation itself, I don't think is like horrible, but again, it's just like, okay, fine, we're doing this again.
That said, though, it's probably still the best death in this movie, though.
I would say so, yeah.
Because, you know, seeing his like decapitation and then the body sort of standing there for a second before it falls, it at least was like, okay, that's a death. Like you know, it's not as good as the original's version of this, but it is a death. They tried to do something a little bit different with it, which like that's the weird thing to me about all these deaths that we're talking about and comparing, is that I would say this and the wife's death at the hospital are the only ones that feel like they actually change anything significant. The other ones are just, you know, they add a bit of glass to the pre-spawn. They shoot the falling off the balcony the exact same way, pretty much. The nanny's pretty much the same, except for she doesn't go through the window. Like, a lot of them are just so close that it's kind of nuts that, like, the one in the hospital is so different. Like, it just completely just they threw away any semblance of what the original murder was. So here's a question I have for you, Tim, now that we've talked about this. How do you feel about the actor playing Damien and the fact that he just looks like he's evil from the very first second we see him?
Yeah, I mean, I never like, you know, criticizing like children actors because I mean, acting itself is very hard, and yeah, I don't even know if we should be having children act. It seems like there's a lot of you know, bad stuff that comes with that. With that being said, like, I didn't think this kid was that great.
Nah.
And I mean, who knows, maybe it's not his fault. Like you said, like the movie's obviously trying to be like, see, he's evil, look at him, like looking all wicked and mischievous and stuff, like but yeah, it didn't really do anything for me. Again, I think this is always just so much more of like the boring take where it's like, oh yeah, he's very obviously evil, like why not just make him seem more like a regular kid? Then like I feel like it would be more of a struggle for, you know, the parents having to deal with like people telling them that he's an antichrist. Like, of course you're gonna believe this kid is an antichrist, like the way he's like, you know, constantly looking at people and stuff, and like flipping out like because you're taking him to church or whatever. Like, I don't know, it seems like it'd just be more interesting to have it be more subtle.
Well, talking about changes there, when they try to take him to church, in the original he just cries and starts like kicking and screaming. In this one, he starts like attacking Julia Stiles and like actually draws blood from her head because he's like scratching at her head like so viciously. And I was like, okay, fair enough. If that's what we're doing.
It's extreme.
Yeah, I think because so when Julia Stiles finds out she's pregnant and she tells Liev Schreiber, I don't think this happened in I think in the original movie the wife wanted the kid, but in this one she immediately says, no, I want no more children. I hate this one we've got. I don't want any more. I'm having an abortion. And it was so weird is that if you wanted me to like Liev Schreiber's character, having him like talk to her therapist and say, no, we're having this baby. We need this baby. Like, okay, so you're saying your wife doesn't have a choice in this matter, and also you're saying you want it because it'll fix the marriage. I mean, I don't know. It seems
red
a bit
flags much.
Yeah, it seems a bit unhealthy. That there.
Also, like a lot of this stuff, it doesn't feel like super earned because I feel like we just don't get a ton of scenes like with, you know, Damien and especially like everyone like all together. So it's always kind of hard to tell like what their relationship is. And like you said, it seems like the you know, Julia Stiles is just real early on is just instantly like, oh, this kid's the devil. I hate him. Like I don't get along with them. But I feel like we barely see them like interact that much, so it's hard to like it does feel out of nowhere when she jumps to that conclusion versus like, yeah, if we got more time with them to build up that relationship and to see why, you know, she's noticing these things, then I feel like it would make more sense. But I feel like we get very few, like, I don't know, character stuff in this.
Yeah, I mean, the only time you really see her being happy with the kid is like the little like sort of montage of like family photographs you see like during the time jump before they or just after they move, or maybe it's before they move, whatever, at the start.
I think like very, very early on when it's like still a baby and not doing anything, she seems like into it, but yeah.
Yeah, because they do like a sort of new version of that moment in the original where in the original they're walking down the path next to the lake or whatever, and Damien disappears for a second, and like they get worried, and they see him like a minute later and he's fine, and it's just relief, right? They're just happy that he's okay. And it's played like a normal moment where, you know, a parent just loses track of their kid for a second, panics a little bit, and it's like, no, it's fine. They're just behind a tree. It's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Here, though, like, well, first of all, he actually does it intentionally. He's hiding behind a tree so he can jump out and go, and then she reacts like so. Like, I feel like even at this point, she's already done with this kid. She's had enough of this. Like this. I mean, maybe there was like some interesting subtext you could have done here with like the movie starts with Schreiber saying, "Wait, she lost the baby? No, she was so like she needed that baby. She had her heart set and had been a mother." Honestly, everything that happens for the rest of the movie makes me question if that's true, or if that's just what he was trying to like force on her, and like he was gaslighting her into thinking, "Oh no, you need to be a parent. This is perfect for you. You want to be a mother."
Yeah.
Because everything else in the movie after that opening does not tell me she is into this at all. No. Now, admittedly, yeah, it could just because it's not actually her son, and deep down she knows that. Because we're not explaining everything here, because we're assuming that you're familiar with the original, but just in case you're not, just to sum up very quickly, evil priests who are actually Satanists killed their child at the hospital, and then offered, after claiming the baby just died naturally, offered Liev Schreiber, or in the original Gregory Peck, another child that they say the mother died during childbirth, and that's Damien. But Damien was actually born of a jackal. And that's something the priest that comes to warn Liev Schreiber tells him about before he dies. And of course, later on, we do get the scenes where they go and investigate this, and they find the jackal corpse in the coffin where the mother of Damien's supposed to be, as well as the clearly murdered baby in the other coffin with the big hole in its head. I mean, I have nothing to add about how this movie does any of those things. It doesn't do anything interesting or new with them. It doesn't shake them up in any meaningful way. The only thing I could really point out is that when they get the location for the cemetery, they get it from like this really injured priest who was behind a lot of it, and they go to him. Yeah. In the original movie, he is like, you know, he's injured from the fire at the hospital that happened years prior. In this one, though, the makeup they've put him in is so over the top. Like, they're like, oh, he's kind of scary, right? Because he's all deformed. Like,
he looks like someone from like Lord of the Rings or something. Like,
yeah, he looks like Snoke from Star Wars.
Right? Yeah,
Force Awakens. Also, this is some of the stuff that felt really rushed in this version. Actually, is I felt like the entire trip to Italy, going to this guy and then getting to the cemetery, is like half as long as it is in the original, and every step of it just feels super super quick. And that includes the conversation at the side of the road where the reporter, who at this point of course is on board because he thinks he's going to die, because the photographs of the other victims showed that they were going to die. Now he thinks he's going to die, so he's helping Liev Schreiber out. But he's like reading the prophecy, and they're basically saying, oh, this means politics, and this means the European Union or whatever. Like they're kind of equating things to these real world things going on. And that scene in the original was very good. This one, it feels like they're standing in front of a green screen and everything's like super white and blue and cold, and I don't know. Every part of this is unappealing in every conceivable way. Like I really struggle to think of a single thing in this movie that I outright like. Like, is there anything in this movie that I like? I don't think there is.
No, everything just feels like a chore. I mean, again, we keep comparing it to the original, which was just so goddamn good. But I mean, even if you haven't seen the original, it's just still gonna feel like, like not great. Like that's just very
no.
bland.
I mean, it would be almost cruel to put this on someone, but it would be interesting to like sit down someone who's not seen the original and show them this. It would probably scar their opinion of the Omen. Like it might even ruin the original if you tried to show them the original after, because this is the first like version they're going to get, and the way it doesn't develop the relationships as well as the original does. Like one of the things that I kept saying in the original movie was how good it is at like pushing Gregory Peck a little bit at a time, so that by the end of the movie you fully believe why he believes now that he has to kill Damien. And this movie, it plays some of those beats, but apart from the fact that he actually says out loud that he wants his son to die, he then like changes his mind because he thinks the guy that gives him the daggers is all drunk, and it's all just a bit of crazy talk. But then the death of the reporter like convinces him to take the daggers again, and he goes and checks Damien's head, 666, blah blah blah, and that's kind of where the movie ramps up to a conclusion. Which, by the way, the daggers, I'd forgotten there was even more rules than I remembered, because I think these were in the original as well. It's not just you have to stab him with 7 daggers, it has to be in the shape of the cross in his body, and it also has to be on like hallowed ground. Which,
so much going on.
Yeah, so, some of those sequels were ignoring a lot of those rules. Even more than I think we were even thinking as we were talking about them.
I think as like time keeps going on, like God is just like, all right, listen, all right, we really got to get this going. All right, let's make a deal. Like, just use one of the knives, okay? That's good enough. And
that'll do.
All right.
Yeah, actually, I suppose the final death that's different, I guess, is the nanny, like the evil nanny. Because in the original, it was more like a stabbing when they were sort of struggling. Here, she actually gets outside when he's trying to take Damien away, and he runs her over with the car. It's this one. It's a bit more over the top and not enough to be funny, but
I had like a slight unexpected chuckle. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, but yeah,
unexpected chuckle.
Also, I guess not a death, but he does also like take care of the dog when it's running after me. Like opens a trap door. Oh yeah,
he opens like the cellar door or something, then just like shuts it, and just takes care of the dog instantly. That's it. Okay, the dog. They've gotten past the dog, which again. That's just one of those scenes that was so painfully sit through again, is the scene where he sees the dog for the first time and he's like, oh, Nanny, what's this? Like, oh, Damien likes the dog. Make a good guard dog when you're gone. And they're just repeating lines from the original film. Like, they're just repeating the scene verbatim.
I feel like in the original, though, like, I don't know, maybe the nanny just felt a little bit more convincing, where it's like, okay, it's still weird that you did this, but I see the points you're making that, Damien like bonded with this dog and everything, and that blah blah blah. Like here, like the lady just instantly seems crazy, and it seems like ridiculous that he would even entertain the fact that like, yeah, I'll just let you have this like weird dog from nowhere like stay with us.
Yeah, but I think it's just one of like several scenes, and when I say several scenes, I do legitimately mean even saying every other scene might be underselling it. It might be like 2/3 of the scenes in the movie are just painfully watching the exact same scene from the original, but done with poorer direction, lesser performances, and just that general feeling of, oh, I've seen this. Like that vibe is just there the entire time. Not that I think it would work for someone who hasn't seen the original. I think just someone who hasn't seen the original just wouldn't care about what's going on, because the movie does a really poor job of actually making it work. But yeah, that feeling of just feel like you're going through the motions of seeing the exact same stuff but in a much worse way, it's persistent throughout the entire time. It never lets up, right down to the ending where he tries to stab Damien in the church. The SWAT team gets him. Interestingly, the SWAT team guy who yells out has an American accent, which I thought was strange given that they're in England.
That's true, yeah.
But it ends the same way at the funeral. Damien's with the president. He smiles at the camera. Adios, amigos.
Everyone in the theater stands up and applauds the great movie they've just seen.
No, they stand up and applaud because they're so relieved that they get to leave.
I do want to give like a little bit of credit to I mean I hate to criticize, but like yeah, the leads I don't think are like amazing, but like some of the side characters I think are actually like pretty good actors. I think it was like what's his name? Pete, is it Postlethwaite that did the priest?
Yeah, the priest that gets skewered. Yeah, most people probably know him from Lost World, Jurassic Park. I feel like.
Oh right, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, like he's like a great actor, and I mean, I don't think this movie is doing him like any, like justice or whatever. But he's pretty good. And then I forget the name of the guy that did the journalist, but he's like usually pretty good.
Yeah, David Thewlis.
Yeah, and then what is wasn't it Mia Farrow was the nanny?
Yes.
And like obviously like these are good actors, but I just think they're either maybe not being directed the best, or they're just not given like a lot to do or whatever. But
I mean, from the director of Max Payne, I mean, what are you expecting, I guess?
Actually, I didn't realize that the pedigree that we have here.
Yeah,
surprising there was no like bullet time in this.
Yeah, I mean, he did the remake of Flight of the Phoenix, which I remember being okay, like watchable. I never saw the original, admittedly, so the original may be much better. But other than that, he did Max Payne, and oh dear, he did Die Hard 5, which is an absolute disaster of a movie.
Okay, I think I forget that one.
You want to forget it. Okay. I've never seen it, but he did Behind Enemy Lines, which I do think people do like. I've heard people say they like that movie, I think.
Oh, okay.
Possibly.
Yeah. Not sure if I've seen it. I thought I did for a second, but I think I'm thinking of Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, Black Hawk Down, obviously that's a Ridley Scott movie. Yeah, notably no horror movies here other than the Omen remake. That's the only one that's a horror movie. So
it's one and done.
So was Richard Donner, to be fair, but that's because like
you go out on top.
Like, you went out
like,
on top.
I just made this great masterpiece.
He thought, I'm going to go make one of the best superhero movies ever made now. I'm going to keep leaving my stamp all over the place. I'll make the best buddy cop movie ever made, maybe.
Yeah.
I'll make the best kids adventure movie ever made, that being The Goonies. Like, he was going around just hitting things out the park. This guy went on to do Die Hard 5. Which, honestly, from memory, is worse than this movie, and that should tell you something.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Are we done? Or is it time to do the wrap-up stuff? Because I don't know what else there is to say.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we got this far.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I'm surprised we hit the hour, to be honest. There's very, very little worth mentioning here. It's repetitious. It's bland, it's dull, and it is impossible to actually give a shit about anything that's happening. Like, I've never felt so detached from a movie before in my life, as it just coldly replays scenes. Sometimes word for word, sometimes they shake it up a little bit dialogue-wise to make it feel a little bit different. Or they'll change, like, the giraffe or baboon scene from the original to, like...
Right,
like, I think it was monkeys in, like, the zoo cage this time that start freaking out.
Yeah, and like the gorilla starts like charging at the glass. Like before they were like driving through and like all the baboons like jump on the car. But again, it's like a big CGI gorilla is who cares?
Yeah. All right. What was your scene of the movie, Tim?
Yeah, I mean it's so tough because there really is so little that I enjoyed about the movie. I mean, I guess similar to the first movie, I'll go with the decapitation kill. Yeah, it's not as good as in the first movie, but I was at least like, okay, fine, that's okay enough.
Yeah, I gotta say the same. I don't know what else I'd pick, to be honest, because I don't like anything else in it. I don't even really.
It's not like there's any great. Yeah, like there wasn't really that many great kills. Like a lot of the other ones were like laughably bad, and then it's not like there's any outstanding, like conversations or like anything in the movie that you can really prop up.
Yeah. All right, MVP of the movie.
Well, I mean, again, some of the side characters like were pretty good, but again, not really given much. Yeah, I guess I'll go with the priest because I enjoy that actor, even though like he's not doing much in here, but I guess that's fine.
Yeah. I definitely know I'm not picking Liev Schreiber or Julia Stiles because I think they're both bad.
Right, yeah.
But I think they're both actively bad in this. So I guess I'm going with the priest by default as well.
Sure.
Maybe. I mean, who else would have picked Thewlis, perhaps? Whoever did
Kind of the two choices.
Yeah, whoever did catering.
Sure.
All right, Tim, rate this junk so we can get out of here.
I mean, obviously, I'm gonna go pretty low. I mean, I won't draw it out. I guess I'm just gonna go with a 2. Like, there's just so little to. I mean, maybe that sounds unfair. But like, I don't know. There's just like very little to latch onto, and everything that like would maybe be like slightly interesting is just like, well, this is just a worse version of the original, which is a like really really good movie. So yeah, I mean, there's just nothing there.
Yeah, it's just devoid of any artistic spirit or flair or any kind of passion or like any word I can use to describe just a feeling of anything.
So like, yeah, the thing that sucks is, again, yeah, I mentioned this before, but like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, I hate that movie with a passion because like I love that franchise and I thought the remake was horrible, but at least there's stuff I can talk about, like, and I can point out that like, oh, like, they did this and like this was a stupid idea or whatever. But like, I feel like a lot of passion about that. Like this, like you said, yeah, it's just you feel very detached from it. It's just like, okay, yeah, there's like nothing there to even really get like mad about. It's just all kind of like boring slog to get through, and nothing I'm really gonna remember after we're done recording.
Oh, definitely not. So yeah, I'm also going with a 2. It's a 2 instead of a 1 because it has production value. It has the basic, requirements of being a film that was released in theaters. It's not a pretty film that was released in theaters. It looks, like I said, that cold, sterile, desaturated vibe of the mid 2000s all over it. But it rises above your, 1 out of 10s, but not by much.
Yeah,
not by much. It's impossible to really feel anything for it.
Yeah, I think to go below a 2, it would have to like actively make me mad, or maybe have like something involved in it that is like actively made the world like a worse place or whatever. Like as it is just very forgettable, and like, yeah, it doesn't really inspire much feelings about it.
Dear. I mean, for example, the last thing I gave a 1 out of 10 to on this show, and you give it a 1.5, was Alone in the Dark by Uwe Boll. So that's the sort of thing this is narrowly beaten.
Okay.
Okay, that's your
yeah.
point of comparison. All right, that has been the show, everyone. Of course, more Oktoberthon still to come. This is quite late in the month by the time this goes out, but we still have one more Omen movie to do, so that'll be here before the end. That may even be the last episode of the month. But you can get bonus episodes and other bonus content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. I wouldn't be able to do this show as often as we do, along with all the other movie podcasts like the Atomic Cinema Experiment, Collector's Cut, all the TV reviews over MailFuzz TV, without support on places like Patreon or YouTube membership if that's more your thing. But you get an exclusive episode every month, although there's actually 3 exclusive episodes in October since we're doing so many. And you get even more streams, plus there's bonuses for the other shows and stuff. So go and have a look, see if you're interested in what to help keep the show going. Any help and support is greatly appreciated. But that is us. Otherwise, for free, you can simply like, subscribe, ding the bell, let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments. But that's us. That's the show. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies and thankfully this era of remakes is kind of dead.